Hey, this is Mike with Christian Med. This week I want to talk about how God made frequencies and how frequencies are used to be beneficial for our lives. So let's get started. So when it comes to frequencies, God made frequencies. When we start realizing that we start typecasting frequencies as this thing is New Age and this thing is Christian. So in other words, if Christian churches can have bells in it and have even bell choirs and everything else to generate tones and then generate a response, why do we typecast things like singing bowls in a different category? Because we're saying that this part is New Age, but the other part is Christian. So we start typecasting things. I find this all very puzzling to me. I realize that there is a lot of mythology when it comes to New Age stuff, and I don't practice New Age stuff, but I do use singing bowls, and I do use things in my practice when it comes to my worship of God as a Christian. So even though this doesn't fit the standard mold, it doesn't mean that it's not Christian. So let's first talk about some scriptures. One of the first things that of course comes to mind is Genesis 3, that said God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. So light is frequency, right? I mean, we know that, through the electromagnetic spectrum, that certain light frequencies we can see within our eyes. There's other things like infrared and things like that that are also light frequencies that we cannot perceive through our sight. There's x-rays, there's all kinds of different types of, frequencies and, things like that we can end up, proving scientifically that they exist, but they are not stereotypical, something that we can see with our, I lost my train of thought. So let's talk about frequencies. Frequencies were designed by God, and when it comes down to the God saying Jesus was the Word, So let's talk about frequencies. So when it comes to frequencies, frequencies were made by God, okay? In other words, the whole concept of us being able to see frequencies with our eyes was all designed by God. Frequencies being able to hear through our ears was all designed by God. Why we've now typecast things and said this is a Buddhist practice, this is a New Age practice, this is a, these are, people from the Himalayas that make these bowls. So, people are like, well, there's things that are Christian and things that are not. So in other words, when we look at bells, we have whole bell choirs that are quote-unquote Christian, that basically are generating frequencies to play out a song, Well, these basically, they generate a frequency. That's all they do. For me, these types of frequencies are calming. They're gentle to my soul. They end up shifting me from a fight and flight type thing to a rest and relax type state, which actually allows me to feel closer to God, that allows me to feel more just at peace with Him, asking Him to come into my heart, be a deeper, more positive part of my life. This is what frequency means to me. This is what frequency, and the reason why I use these things is because these things, I think, have a profound impact on our lives. When we allow ourselves to slow down, stop doing the rat race and start saying, I just want to have a pleasant tone in my ears and just relax and breathe and slow down and think about God and then review scriptures in the right mindset, in the right state of mind. You know, when it comes down to frequencies, you know, there's tons of things about frequencies. You know, even Genesis 1:3 said, let there be light, and there was light. You know, this is what God said. He spoke frequencies into existence. You know, and when we start realizing that this is a mirror of God, that, you know, when we allow these things to penetrate us and allow us just to be relaxed and slow down and stop worrying about life and start worrying more about getting in right relationship with Him, that's when we benefit. You know, another thing that always comes to mind is the beginning of John, where it says basically, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. It says, He was in the beginning with God. All things were made through Him, and through Him was not anything made that was made. And Him was life. In Him was life. And the life was the light of men. So light is frequency. These things are frequency. When you start seeing that God is in these things are created things, but God is still in it. There's a foundation, a fabric, let's say, a aspect of continuity that God allows these things to exist and allows us to exist. And when we start realizing that we're linked to these things as we're linked to every human being on the planet, that's when we start realizing that we can live out the greatest commandment. That's when we start realizing that basically loving God and loving people is what we're called to do. Through that, we fill out the whole law of the prophets. We end up becoming righteous. Not a righteousness that we created, but a righteousness in understanding that we are all in this together. And when we stop fighting with one another and we start loving on one another, that's when we have a very positive aspect of God in our lives. In other words, when we stop saying, well, this is New Age, so I'm not going to listen to this person because he doesn't know what he's talking about. You know, when we stop judging people and start listening to what they're truly saying. You know, when I went down the path of being a Christian, you know, I basically went down kicking and screaming. You know, I said, these people are a bunch of hypocrites. I don't want to be in that camp. You know, and God told me I got to do it my own way. This is part of my own way. You know, I understand this stuff because I've studied Nikola Tesla. You know, I understand how these things shift my state because of him. You know, this guy was brilliant. You know, he kind of lost it at the end, which a lot of our, you know, people in the past have. But maybe he was just misunderstood and misquoted. We don't really know at this point. I never get to talk to the man one-on-one, you know, way before my time, you know, but we rely on him for, you know, the power grid and everything else. And he really was trying to better people's lives. He was living out the greatest commandment the way he thought he should, you know, and I'm trying to live out the greatest commandment the best way I think I should. And these things are just tools for me. And, you know, they really do have just a pleasant tone. And they just help me feel closer to God. So I hope you kind of understand where I'm coming with some of this, and I hope you understand that these things can be Christian as much as anything else can be Christian. You know, so let's stop pigeonholing things and let's start thinking about what's truly important, living out the greatest commandment. You know, loving God with all of our mind, heart, and soul, and loving people. You know, treating people the way we would want to be treated if the roles were reversed. I get so tired of all this judgmental aspect of things where people just want to polarize people. I don't want to polarize anybody. I just want to love on people. So have a pleasant